Good morning and thank you for joining me. If you see the little red square that says live up top, that means you're catching me while I'm live. And if I see your comments, I'll definitely reply to them then. If you don't see the little red square that says live, that means you're catching me on the replay. And if it sends me notifications of any comments, I'll definitely reply to those. And thank you for any hearts and shares, because those do help to get more exposure for my little business. But I wanted to come back. I intended on, this is the chair I was working on yesterday, and I put a coat of primer, the Dixie Belle Boss, on there because it looked like there was a grease on here. Hey Carlin, it looked like there was a grease or an oil in this chair, and I didn't want it to bleed through, and it will bleed through, and no matter how many coats of paint, it'll continue to come through if you don't prime it. But what I should have done was put 2 coats of primer. What I did was put 1 coat of primer, so I wanted to show you exactly what bleed through is. Here it is right here. This is exactly what bleed through is, and I'm now today going to have to put another coat of the primer on here, because what I put, whatever was in this chair, was so strong that it actually was able to bleed through the 1 thin coat that I put on yesterday of the primer, the Boss. So today I'm going to have to put another coat on. So there's areas all through here, and this is just what's called bleed through. It usually can be the tannins in your wood if you've sanded the wood, or it can be any type of oil or grease that's been poured on or polished on, you know, pledge and things like that, oils and things that actually come back to the surface, and the more paint you put, no matter what kind of paint you put, it's going to come through there. So this morning I'm going to have to work some more, because I didn't know that I needed 2 coats, so I'm going to put a second coat. But this is the DIY clay-based paint, and it's going to be reactivated whenever I put some liquid on here. So I know I've said a million times, and you've heard elsewhere, you're not supposed to contaminate your paint by putting your brush back in it, because you can be putting something off of here, you know, into your container. But when I'm using these small 8-ounce sample sizes, I don't worry a whole lot about that, because I go through them pretty quick anyway. I would never like dip into my, well, I never say never, but I very seldom am going to dip into my quart. But I know that this red is very likely, you can see where it stained the end of my brush yesterday. This brush has already been cleaned, but that's how highly pigmented this paint is. And I know that it's very likely to be reactivated by this second layer of primer that I'm going to have to put. So I'm going to do the right thing this morning and pour a little out in this container to use. And then hopefully I can just wipe around the edge there and not seal my dang lid shut. So I am being careful with contaminating my primer, because I don't want all my primer to be red. So I definitely want to get a good coat over where we know we got some bleed through. I'm going to mark those places first and go ahead and do this. I'm going to continue to paint the rest of this chair. I don't see any bleed through anyplace else, so the rest of it's going to be ready for its second coat, which I will put on today, and I'll come back after that, after my coat dries and I start to put the design on it. I'll come back on and do another live of that, but I don't know that anybody's gonna want to watch me go through, and that wasn't near enough that I poured out the first time, that anybody's going to want to watch me put a second coat of paint on this chair. But I did want to, you know, I mean, I had a perfect example of what bleed through is, so I was glad to be able to pop on here and show you that, just in case you were wondering and doubting yourself. And, you know, yesterday the whole point was to discuss prep work and how important it is, and I really did think that 1 coat would be enough. But I guess it's an indicator if there's a lot, if you obviously know there's going to be bleed through. Like with this chair yesterday, it was 100% obvious that there was some kind of grease on there. And maybe a good rule of thumb will be if when in doubt, put a second coat. So then you're not here the second day, you know, more or less wasting some of the paint that you have on there. But I'm not going to feel like I've wasted too much either, because this particular Boss that I'm putting on here now is going to dry clear. So it's almost like, you know, you're still going to be able to see my my red paint through it. So it'll not have been a wasted, you know, a wasted coat. Make sure and always check around the back, because it looked like it was going on so thin and so good, but when I walk back here, there's all kinds of runs and drips to the back. So always make sure, you know, when you're reaching around something to get to the back of your project, that you are careful and on the lookout for runs, because even though this is going to dry clear, any runs would show. And I'm just taking anywhere where I went around the edges, even though I didn't intend to. I'm just sort of smoothing those out. I'm going to leave it on there. Okay. It's puddling a little bit at the edges of these spindles, so I'm just going to come up. Definitely not going to hurt to come up. And hopefully this will dry, and I'm going to go ahead and put the second coat of red on everything else now. And hopefully this, I'll let this dry naturally really good today. Hopefully this will dry, and then after lunch I can put, I would love to do it before lunch, so if I can I will. I'm going to put this another coat of red on here, and then I'm going to put a coat of probably Big Top, because I have it right here. This is water-based, like a poly, a water-based poly, and it's clear. And I'm going to put it over the whole chair, one coat over the whole chair, and let that dry. Then I'm going to come back and put the gray, and I don't know whether I'll need to poly before I put the black on that. We'll see which, you know, which brushes and how that goes at that time. And then I'll put another coat of poly over everything, because we're going to need the black and the gray to be dried on there as well. But anyway, so there's a new rule to follow when you obviously can see that it's going to have bleed through, because you see grease or you see the sand spot. Put 2 coats of primer on there, not just one, or you could possibly still have a little bit of bleed through. The worst, if we look back at yesterday's video, of the grease that I saw on there was here in the center, and I put a thicker coat on there, but that was not quite, and right there it worked. But apparently my coat wasn't thick enough on this side, and that's why I had to bleed through. If it bleeds through again, that'll be a new one on me, and we'll do the same procedure and come back for a 3rd coat. So thanks for joining me, and watch for a live later today if you want to see the gray and the black going on for the buffalo plaid. Thanks. Bye.